Bullies mock the quiet kid. Their jaws drop when his secret is revealed. David Mitchell hunched his shoulders as he navigated the crowded hallways of Westlake High School. At 15, he was average height, but carried extra weight that made his school uniform strain at the seams. His round cheeks flushed easily, a trait that had earned him the nickname Tomato Face within his first week as a transfer student. Today marked his third month at Westlake, and nothing had improved. If anything, the bullying had intensified. David kept his eyes fixed on the linoleum floor, counting the steps to his next class. 27 more steps, just 27 steps, and he'd be safe in Mr. Peterson's history classroom. He didn't make it. Well, if it isn't Tomato Face. Waddling to class came a voice that made David's stomach clench. Brady Williams, captain of the wrestling team and undisputed king of Westlake's social hierarchy, leaned against a row of lockers. At his side stood his two constant companions, Damon Chase, a lanky basketball player with a permanent sneer, and Tyler Reed, whose bulging muscles testified to his dedication to weightlifting. David tried to sidestep them, but Tyler extended a foot, sending David sprawling across the floor. His books scattered, and his glasses skidded several feet away. Laughter erupted around him. "Oops," Tyler said, his voice dripping with mock concern. "Gravity seems to work extra hard on you, doesn't it, Fatso?" David's hands trembled as he gathered his books. Someone, he couldn't see who, kicked his history textbook further down the hall, eliciting more laughter. His vision blurred, not just from the absence of his glasses, but from the tears he refused to let fall. A pair of shoes stopped in front of him. Designer sneakers, Brady's trademark footwear. "You know," Brady said conversationally, "I'm doing you a favor, Mitchell. Every time you fall, it's exercise. God knows you need it." David said nothing. He located his glasses, thankfully unbroken, and placed them back on his nose. The world came into sharp focus, including Brady's smirking face just inches from his own. "Nothing to say? Come on, we're waiting for that witty comeback." Brady glanced at his friends. "Oh wait, he can't speak when he's out of breath, and he's always out of breath." Damon chuckled. "Maybe he's storing all his words in those cheeks, along with winter nuts." David stood up, clutching his books to his chest. His eyes met Brady's for just a moment, and something flickered there. Something that made Brady take an unconscious step back. But the moment passed, and Brady's arrogant smile returned. "Get to class, Tomato Face. Try not to break the chair." As David walked away, he heard Tyler call out, "Hey, Mitchell, my little sister needs a beanbag chair for her room. Can she use you?" More laughter followed him into the classroom. Mr. Peterson glanced up as David entered. "Cutting it close, Mr. Mitchell." "Sorry," David mumbled, sliding into his seat at the back of the room. Mr. Peterson was already drawing a timeline on the whiteboard, diving into a lecture about the Civil War. David tried to focus, but his mind kept replaying the hallway incident. He absent-mindedly rubbed his forearm, where a faded scar ran from his wrist almost to his elbow, a souvenir from another life, another country. "If they only knew," he thought. "If they had any idea who I really am, what I've done, what I can do," but they didn't know. Nobody at Westlake knew that before moving to this affluent American suburb, David had spent 12 years in Grozny, Chechnya. Nobody knew about his father, Mikhail Volkov, whose name still caused hardened men to pale. Nobody knew that what they mistook for childhood pudginess was actually the beginning of the same solid build that had made David's father legendary in certain circles. And absolutely nobody knew that from age 6, David, then known as Igor, Volkov, had trained daily in Systema, the brutal Russian martial art favored by special forces and, more relevantly, by the organization his father had led. When his mother fled with him to America, following his father's assassination, she had changed their names, their appearances, their entire identities. "We start fresh," she had said in her heavily accented English. "No fighting, no drawing attention. We are normal now." For her sake, David had promised to keep his past hidden, to endure whatever came his way without revealing what he was capable of. But with each passing day at Westlake, that promise became harder to keep. The cafeteria was David's personal hell. Navigating the social minefield of lunch tables was worse than anything he'd faced in Chechnya. He collected his food, a sandwich, apple, and water, and scanned the room for an empty table. There wasn't one. Of course there wasn't. He spotted a table with just 2 girls sitting at the far end, and headed toward it. He could sit at the opposite end, disturbing no one. He never made it there. Brady's foot appeared out of nowhere, and this time, David couldn't catch himself. His tray went flying, the sandwich launching into the air before landing with a sad splat on the floor. His water bottle rolled across the cafeteria. "Man, you're just so clumsy today," Brady announced loudly. "Someone should check the gravitational field around Mitchell. It seems extra strong." David kneeled to clean up the mess, his face burning. Then he felt something cold and wet seep through his shirt, chocolate milk dripping down his back. He turned to see Damon standing over him, empty carton in hand. "Thought I'd help cool down that tomato face," Damon explained to the appreciative audience. David's vision narrowed, a familiar feeling from his childhood, the prelude to violence. His muscles coiled, ready. One move, that's all it would take. One move and Damon would be on the ground, gasping for air. "No, I promised Mom. Normal life, normal kid." With trembling hands, David continued cleaning up his lunch. Someone from the kitchen staff appeared with a mop, looking annoyed. "Sorry," David muttered. "Just go get cleaned up," the cafeteria worker said, taking over. As David headed for the bathroom, the laughter faded behind him. In the empty restroom, he peeled off his soiled shirt and rinsed it in the sink. The cold water splashed against his skin, and he caught his reflection in the mirror. Despite what everyone at Westlake thought, he wasn't fat. Beneath the loose clothes his mother insisted he wear, to blend in, to be unremarkable, his body was solid, not the chiseled physique of a bodybuilder, but the functional strength of someone trained for combat. The scar on his forearm was just one of several marks scattered across his body, each with its own story. 3 more years, he told his reflection. 3 more years and I can leave this place. I can go to college far away where no one knows. I can start again. The bathroom door swung open, and David quickly pulled his damp shirt back on. A boy he vaguely recognized from his English class entered, stopping short when he saw David. "Whoa, rough day?" the boy asked, eyeing David's wet shirt. David nodded. "Brady and his goons are total jerks," the boy continued, moving to the sink. "I'm Alex, by the way. We sit near each other in Donovan's class." "David, yeah, I know. Everyone knows about the new kid." Alex dried his hands. "Listen, I have a spare shirt in my gym locker. You want it? It's clean." David blinked, surprised by the offer. "Why would you help me?" Alex shrugged. "Because Brady's crew are jerks, and not everyone at Westlake is like them." He gestured to David's shirt. "Besides, you'll catch a cold in that." 5 minutes later, David entered his next class wearing Alex's slightly too tight t-shirt. It was the first kindness anyone at Westlake had shown him. The gym was another battlefield. Coach Brenner believed in character building through competitive sports, which meant dividing the class into teams and letting the strongest dominate the weakest. Today was dodgeball. "Williams, Reed, your captains," Coach announced. "Pick your teams." The selection process was predictable. The athletic kids went first, then the average ones, until only David and a skinny boy with asthma remained. "I'll take Martinez," Brady said, pointing to the asthmatic boy. Tyler laughed. "Guess that leaves us with Tomato Face." David joined Tyler's team, knowing his selection had nothing to do with perceived athletic ability and everything to do with making him a target. "Try not to get hit in the first 5 seconds, Tyler advised him with a smirk. The whistle blew, and the game began. Balls flew across the gymnasium, and players from both sides were quickly eliminated. David moved with deliberate awkwardness, making himself seem slower and clumsier than he was. It was a technique he'd perfected over the past months, appearing physically inept while actually staying carefully out of harm's way. But today, Brady and his friends had other plans. They coordinated their attacks, herding David into a corner. 3 balls came at him simultaneously from different angles. In that split second, instinct overrode caution. David's body moved with the fluid precision that had been drilled into him since childhood. He sidestepped one ball, ducked under another, and caught the third, all in one seamless motion that looked almost choreographed in its precision. The gym fell silent. Coach Brenner's whistle remained unpursed at his lips. David realized his mistake immediately. He'd revealed too much. Normal kids, especially ones supposedly as uncoordinated as him, didn't move like that. Brady was the first to recover. "Lucky catch," he called out, but his eyes had narrowed, suspiciously. David deliberately threw the ball weakly, missing his target by a wide margin. Then he allowed the next ball thrown his way to hit him squarely in the chest. "Out, Mitchell," Coach Brenner called. As David took his place on the sidelines, he caught Brady watching him with newfound interest. It wasn't the look of a bully assessing a victim anymore. It was the look of a predator who'd spotted something unusual in its territory. "I need to be more careful," David thought. 2 weeks passed. The bullying continued, but with a subtle difference. Brady seemed to be testing him, pushing harder, looking for cracks in his facade. It was as if that moment in the gym had awakened something in the bully, a hunter's instinct that told him there was more to David than met the eye. The incidents grew more frequent, more public, more humiliating. In chemistry, someone, Tyler, almost certainly, added something to David's experiment that caused it to foam over, ruining his work and earning him a lecture from the teacher about laboratory safety. In the hallways, the shoulder checks became harder, the accidental collisions more painful. Twice, David found his locker jammed shut with gum stuffed into the lock. During lunch, his table, he'd started sitting with Alex and a few other fringe students, became a target for food missiles launched from Brady's direction. Through it, all David maintained his composure, swallowing his pride and his anger, for his mother's sake, for their safety, for their new life. But then came the day when everything changed. David was at his locker after school when he overheard Brady and his friends around the corner. "I'm telling you, there's something weird about him," Brady was saying. "Did you see how he moved that day in gym? That wasn't just luck." "So what?" Damon replied. "He caught a ball, big deal." "It's not just that, haven't you noticed? He takes everything we dish out, but he never seems scared. Annoyed, sure, embarrassed, definitely, but not scared." Brady lowered his voice, but David's trained ears caught every word. "My dad's a cop, remember? He says you can tell a lot about people by how they handle fear. Mitchell doesn't act like a victim. He acts like someone holding back." "Holding back what?" Tyler scoffed. "The power to eat an entire pizza?" "I don't know," Brady admitted, "but I'm going to find out. I think it's time we really tested him." "What did you have in mind?" Damon asked, his interest piqued. "Meet me at Miller's Point tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Bring Mitchell." Brady's voice had an edge to it that made David's skin prickle. "Tell him Alex wants to meet him there." "Miller's Point? Isn't that a bit much?" Tyler sounded uncertain. "What's wrong getting cold feet? I just want to see what he's made of. A little scare, that's all." Miller's Point was an abandoned quarry outside town. It was a known party spot, but also isolated and dangerous, with steep cliffs and deep water. David closed his locker silently and walked away, his mind racing. Something was about to happen, something that would force his hand. That night, he opened his closet and removed the false bottom from his suitcase, the one hiding spot his mother didn't know about. Inside lay reminders of his past, a small knife with Cyrillic engravings, a frayed photograph of a stern-faced man standing beside a much younger David, and a black belt folded neatly beside a pair of fighting gloves. He ran his fingers over the belt, remembering the day he'd earned it. He'd been 12, facing an opponent twice his age in a match that left both of them bloodied. "Never show all of your strength at once," his father had taught him. "Let them underestimate you. It is your greatest advantage." David had followed that advice at Westlake perhaps too well. Now Brady was suspicious, and something told David that tomorrow would be the breaking point. He replaced the items and the false bottom, then sat at his desk and opened his laptop. He typed Miller's Point Quarry into the search bar, studying the images and topography. If a confrontation was coming, he would be prepared. The next day passed in a blur of tension. During lunch, Tyler approached him with forced casualness. "Hey, Mitchell, Alex asked me to tell you he wants to meet up at Miller's Point tonight. 7 o'clock, says he has something to show you." David, who had seen Alex in the library just 10 minutes earlier and knew he had a family dinner that night, nodded. "Miller's Point 7, got it." Tyler seemed surprised by his easy agreement. "You know where it is? I'll find it." At 6:45 that evening, David stood at the edge of the woods that surrounded Miller's Point. The quarry itself was a massive pit, partially filled with water that gleamed darkly in the fading light. Steep cliffs rose on 3 sides, with a rough path winding down to the water on the 4th. He didn't enter immediately. Instead, he circled the perimeter, noting the positions of 3 figures huddled near a cluster of boulders by the water. Brady, Tyler, and Damon had arrived early, as he'd expected. From his vantage point, David could see something else that made his blood run cold. A length of rope and what looked like a weighted bag. Whatever they had planned, it wasn't just a scare tactic. He checked his phone, 6:55. Then he deliberately snapped a twig underfoot and began walking toward the path, making no attempt to hide his approach. "Mitchell, over here," Tyler called out, waving from the boulder cluster. David walked toward them, maintaining his usual slightly hunched posture. As he drew closer, he noted their positions, the tension in their bodies, the way Brady's hand stayed behind a rock where something was concealed. "Where's Alex?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Brady stepped forward. "Alex couldn't make it, but we thought you and I could have a little chat." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You've been at Westlake for what, 3 months now? And I feel like we hardly know you." Not much to know, David replied, keeping his voice neutral. See, that's where I think you're wrong. Brady moved closer. I think there's a lot more to you than this sad sack loser act you've been putting on. Damon and Tyler flanked Brady, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. What do you want? David asked. The truth, Brady said simply. What's your deal, Mitchell? Where did you come from? And don't say Chicago because my dad checked. No record of a David Mitchell transferring from any school in Illinois. A chill ran through David that had nothing to do with the evening air. If Brady's father had been looking into his background, that could mean trouble, not just for him, but for his mother. I don't know what you're talking about, David said. I transferred from Chicago, Harrison High. Liar, Brady spat. Harrison High has no record of you. So who are you really? David took a step back, glancing around as if looking for an escape route. This is crazy. I'm leaving. No, you're not. Brady nodded to his friends, and they moved to block David's path. Not until we get some answers. And not until you learn what happens to people who come to my school with secrets. Brady reached behind the rock and pulled out a baseball bat. Hold him. Damon and Tyler hesitated. Dude, we said we were just going to scare him, Tyler protested. And I'm sure he'll be plenty scared, Brady replied, his voice hard. But I want answers, and I want to make sure he never tells anyone about this little meeting. He gestured with the bat. So hold him. Something changed in David's stance. It was subtle, a slight straightening of his spine, a shift in his weight, distribution, a new stillness that had all three boys unconsciously taking a step back. You should listen to your friend, David said quietly, and his voice was different too, lower, accented. Walk away now. Brady's eyes widened, but he recovered, quickly. So there is something going on with you. I knew it. He raised the bat. Last chance, Mitchell. Tell us who you really are, or this gets ugly. David sighed. It was a weary sound, the exhalation of someone laying down a heavy burden. My name, he said, is not David Mitchell. And then he moved. Years of training, of daily drills and brutal sparring matches, erupted in a blur of precise violence. David sidestepped Brady's swing and drove his palm into the bully's solar plexus, sending him staggering back, gasping for air. The bat clattered to the ground. Damon lunged, swinging wildly. David caught his arm, twisted, and used Damon's own momentum to flip him over his hip. Damon hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of him. Tyler backed away, hands raised. Whoa, I don't want any trouble. You brought the trouble here, David replied coldly. His American accent was gone completely now, replaced by the clipped tones of Eastern Europe. Brady, still struggling for breath, grabbed for the bat again. David kicked it away, then delivered a precise strike to Brady's knee that dropped him to the ground. Stay down, David advised. But Brady, fueled by rage and humiliation, struggled up and charged. This time, David didn't hold back. A flurry of strikes to the ribs, the shoulder, the jaw, and Brady collapsed, blood trickling from his nose. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. Damon was still on the ground, watching, wide-eyed. Tyler stood frozen, his face pale. What are you? Tyler stammered. David looked at them, these boys who had made his life miserable, who had planned something terrible for him tonight. He could see the rope now and the weighted bag. He could imagine what they had intended. My name is Igor Volkov, he said, the syllables of his real name feeling strange on his tongue after so long. My father was Mikhail Volkov. In Chechnya, children learned his name before they learned to fear the dark. He knelt beside Brady, who was conscious but dazed. Your father is a police officer. He should teach you better judgment. If he looked deeper into my past, he would not find David Mitchell, but he might find stories about my father, stories that would keep him awake at night. David stood and looked at each of them in turn. I came to this country to escape that life. My mother and I changed our names, our identities. We wanted peace. His voice hardened. But make no mistake, I am still my father's son. He reached down and helped Damon to his feet. The boy flinched but didn't resist. What happens now? Damon asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Now, you take your friend home. You clean him up. And tomorrow, when people ask what happened, you say, he fell while hiking. David's eyes bored into Damon's. Because if you tell the truth, people will ask questions. Questions about me, and that would make me very unhappy. And what if we do tell? Brady had managed to sit up, one hand pressed to his bleeding nose. Despite his injuries, there was still defiance in his eyes. David smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Then I would have to prove that tonight was just a sample of what I can do. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Brady, whatever your father found or didn't find about me, It would be better for everyone if that investigation stopped immediately. Without waiting for a response, David walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the woods. Behind him, he heard the boys moving, low voices discussing how to get Brady to a car without attracting attention. For the first time since arriving at Westlake, David walked with his head high, his shoulders straight. The mask had slipped. The truth, or at least part of it, was out. There would be consequences, he knew. His mother would be furious, scared. They might have to move again. But as he made his way home through the quiet streets, David felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: freedom. The weight of pretending to be someone he wasn't had lifted, even if only temporarily. Next day at school was strange. Brady was absent. Tyler and Damon were present but subdued. They avoided David's gaze in the hallways, giving him a wide berth when they passed. By lunchtime, rumors were circulating. Brady had been in an accident, people said. Fell while hiking at Miller's Point, might have a concussion, definitely had a broken nose. David sat with Alex and his friends, eating quietly as the gossip swirled around them. "Hey, did you hear about Brady?" Alex asked, sliding onto the bench across from David. "Something about a hiking accident?" Alex nodded. "Yeah, but that's not the weird part. The weird part is that Tyler and Damon are telling everyone to leave you alone. Like, specifically you." David feigned surprise. "Me? Why?" "No idea. But whatever's going on, it's like overnight you've become untouchable." Alex studied him. "Did something happen that I should know about?" "Just a misunderstanding that got cleared up," David replied. The rest of the day passed in a similar fashion. People who had previously ignored him were now nodding hello in the hallways. Teachers who had overlooked the bullying now seemed to notice him, calling on him in class. When David opened his locker after the final bell, a small piece of paper fell out. It was a note, written in a hasty scrawl. "We won't say anything. Just leave us alone." No signature, but it didn't need one. As David walked home, he considered his options. He could tell his mother everything, prepare her for the possibility that they might need to move again. Or he could say nothing, hope that Brady and his friends kept their word and continue with their life here. Neither choice felt right. When he arrived home, he found his mother in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Natalia Mitchell, formerly Natalia Volkova, looked up with a smile that faded when she saw his expression. "What is wrong?" she asked, the Russian accent she tried so hard to mask coming through in her concern. "We need to talk," David said. Over the next hour, he told her everything. The bullying, the confrontation, the truth coming out. He watched her face pale, then harden with determination. "We will pack tonight," she said when he finished. "I still have contacts who can help us." "No," David interrupted. "I don't want to run again." "Igor, David, it is not safe. If people sign up at you, they don't know everything, just enough to leave me alone." He took her hand. "Mom, we've been running for 3 years. I'm tired of it. You're tired of it. Maybe it's time to stand our ground." She looked at him. This boy who had her eyes but his father's build, his father's intensity. "You are too much like him sometimes," she said softly. "Stubborn, proud. He protected what was his. That's all I'm doing." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "One chance, we give this one chance, but if there is any sign of trouble, any sign that someone is looking too closely at our past, we leave. Immediately. Understood?" David nodded. "Understood." Brady returned to school a week later. His nose was splintered and a spectacular bruise had faded to a sickly yellow-green across his cheekbone. He looked smaller somehow, less imposing. He and David passed each other in the hallway during second period. Their eyes met briefly. Brady's gaze dropped first, and he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before continuing on his way. It wasn't friendship or forgiveness. It was acknowledgement, a new understanding. Over the next few weeks, the dynamics of Westlake High School shifted subtly. Brady's influence waned. He was still an athlete, still popular, but the aggressive edge to his leadership had diminished. He and his friends left David alone, not just ignoring him, but actively avoiding any interaction. David found himself with a growing circle of acquaintances, not friends exactly. He was still too guarded, too careful for that, but people who would sit with him at lunch, partner with him in class, nod to him in the hallways. Alex especially seemed determined to draw David out of his shell. "You should join the wrestling team," Alex suggested one day as they walked to math class. "Coach is always looking for new blood." David shook his head. "Not my thing." "Come on, what are you worried about?" "Not being good enough?" Alex laughed. "Everyone starts somewhere." "If only you knew," David thought with an internal smile. Aloud, he said, "Maybe next semester." In truth, he was finding a balance, allowing himself to be a bit more himself. while still keeping the full truth hidden. He no longer pretended to be physically awkward, but he didn't showcase his true abilities either. He spoke a little more, laughed a little more, stood a little straighter. His mother noticed the changes, too. "So you seem happier," she commented one evening as they ate dinner. "More like before." "I am," David admitted. "It's not perfect, but it's better. I think we can stay here, Mom. I think we can make it work." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Your father would be proud. Not of the fighting," she added quickly, "but of how you've handled yourself since." It wasn't a perfect ending. David knew that the truth about his past was still dangerous, that the life they'd fled could still catch up to them someday. Brady's father, the police officer who had looked into his background, remained a potential problem. But for now, for this moment, he had found his footing. He had stood his ground without becoming what he feared. Neither victim nor bully, neither completely David Mitchell nor fully Igor Volkov. He had found himself somewhere in between. And for the first time since arriving in America, that felt like enough. One afternoon, about a month after the incident at Miller's Point, David stayed late after school to help Alex with a science project. As they were leaving, they encountered Brady in the parking lot alone for once. An awkward moment passed as the three boys looked at each other. Then Brady spoke. "Mitchell, Williams," David replied evenly. Another pause. "Need a ride?" Brady asked, gesturing to his car. The question seemed to surprise all three of them. Alex looked from Brady to David, clearly confused by the interaction. David studied Brady's face, searching for any sign of a trap, of lingering resentment. He found none, just a wary respect, and perhaps the beginnings of something like regret. "Thanks," David said, "but we're good." Brady nodded. "Another time, maybe." As Brady drove away, Alex turned to David with raised eyebrows. "Okay, what was that about? Since when are you and Brady Williams on speaking terms?" David shrugged. "Like I said before, just a misunderstanding that got cleared up." "Some misunderstanding," Alex muttered. "The guy used to torment you and now he's offering rides. There's definitely a story there." "Maybe," David agreed with a small smile, "but it's not one I'm ready to tell." As they walked toward the bus stop, David glanced back at the school. This place that had been his personal hell and was now improbably becoming something else. Not quite home, not yet, but a place where he could exist without hiding completely. A place where someday he might even belong. Perhaps, he thought, this is what normal feels like after all. Well, now I want to know, what's your opinion about this story? Leave a comment, we'd love to hear from you. And tell us which city you watched this video from. And it's not over yet. There's another powerful story playing on your screen right now. Click on it. I'm waiting for you.